Okay. I'll get this recorded for the participants who are joining late. So basically, we have decided that we are going to do one session of reading and one session of writing, right? And today I want to take you through the part of writing. I'll record it here and you will be able to check and go through it, okay? Just give me 1 minute. I think Navya has also joined. Just 1 minute. We are going to start, okay? Yeah. So can you all see my screen, Anya and Navya?
Yes.
Okay, so in this is what we are going to study today. I have just made all the points here and this would be recorded, so I'll be able to share with you. See, what is the most important thing in SAT in order to do reading? The most important thing is to know your skills, right? So people come with different skills. Like, for example, you may be a good reader or a slow reader, right? You may be analytical in your approach or you may be very imaginative. You may be scientific or artistic in your approach. So these are a few things which are important to know. So what kind of people you are? Anya, if I ask you, are you a fast reader or a slow reader?
I think somewhere in the middle.
Okay, and what about you, Navya?
Medium.
Medium. Okay. And what about your imagination skills? Are you analytical or imaginative? How do you rate yourself? Are you good at, like, some people are good at science and numbers, others are good at uh, art related content. What about you?
Art related content.
Art related content. Now, if you get a science passage, how would you relate to science is what you'll have to figure out, because you might be studying a lot of art related content in your school, right? Are
Yeah,
both of
but
you?
I have
Yeah.
I have eco also as a subject. So
So eco is again does not talk about discoveries or scientific studies and so on. What about you, Anya? What are you studying?
sir, I'm studying business psychology and bio.
Business psychology and bio. So bio would definitely have some amount of discoveries and theories
Yeah.
and discussions around such things, but probably um, eco and all would not have that, right? So
Yeah.
so you will have to look at which skills you already have related to what subjects you are already studying, and which skills you will need to develop in order to take this test in a very nice way, right? Now, how to develop this skill? Like, for example, if I say both of you are very artistically oriented, so probably any passage which is oriented towards narration of a story or a little descriptive, probably you will feel very comfortable with it. But when it comes to numbers, when it comes to some scientific studies, it might look a little alien. Is that right? Does that happen, Anya and Navya?
Yes, sir, somewhat.
No, no, I mean, okay,
I
fine.
don't
So,
understand it.
yes, Navya?
I was saying I get lost as well because I don't understand it at times.
Yes. So, what you should do is try to convert that also into a story. I think I did this with your class last time when we were using that passage of brain and how it functions with car drivers and all. Was it in your class? No.
No, sir, I don't think so.
Okay, so it was different. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is you can read a science passage also just like a story. Okay, so a story would have a beginning, a theme around whatever they want to explain. Then there would be some build up on in the body part of the passage, and there would be some conclusion, right? So you'll have to learn some simple templates to understand the science passage, and doing a bit of practice of science related passages themselves alone would give you a chance to see a pattern in them and answer the questions accordingly, right? So certain skills you would be born with. I can call that as an unfair advantage that you have, right? So your unfair advantage is art related passages, correct? But what you have to work on is a few science related passages where the content is related to numbers or some scientific phenomenon related to biology or physics or anything. Does that make sense, Anya and Navya? So
Yes, sir.
understanding your
Yes, sir.
own strengths is the first step, right? Then understand different types of passages. This we have been discussing quite a lot in our sessions, and I just want to reiterate and revise it once again. You have these four different types of passages. What are those? Can you read it, Anya? What are the types of passages you get?
Narrative, science, social science, and history.
Yeah. So, and what will you get in narrative passage? What will be the content of a narrative passage?
This will be more, I think, story-like.
It will be more like a story. What about science?
Science could be about a discovery or something. So I think we have
Exactly.
one based on a Pringle chip or something like that.
Yes, yes. So science, that would be a social one because it's a social experiment, right? Something which is done in a real life
Okay.
environment where some observations are made. So that's a social science passage. Science
Okay.
passage is more towards understanding some scientific phenomenon, or they discuss about the functioning of, let's say, nerves or functioning of brain or something related to matter, something that you study in physics. So that's a science passage. But yeah, there are some very interesting science passages also. Like I remember one which talks about why birds study in a V formation. Have you heard of this? Have you done this passage where they talk about why birds study in a why birds fly in a V formation?
No, we haven't done
No?
that.
Okay, so those types of passages are science passages, and the fourth category is that of history. Now, why should you know about them? Why should you divide the passages into different types like narrative, science, social, history? Why should you divide the passages into all these categories? What is the advantage? What is the advantage of dividing the passages into these categories? If you look at the passage and you categorize it, that okay, fine, this is narrative, this is science, this is social science, this is history, is there any advantage? Why should you care about all this division? Well, you can actually have different strategies for different types of passages, isn't it? For a narrative passage, you will have a different strategy. For a science passage, you will have a different strategy. For social science, it will be different. And for history, it will be different. Do you agree, Ujjwal, Navya, and Anya?
Yes, sir.
So if I ask you, what should be the strategy for a narrative passage? If you are given a narrative passage, how will you answer questions? Can you tell me? How will you approach a narrative passage? How will you go about it? Would you read the whole passage first? Would you read the parts of it first? How will you go about it? Navya, do you have any suggestions how to go about a narrative passage?
I mean, it depends. Like, probably you can do the questions which are like directed towards a certain paragraph. So, like, if you're reading the first paragraph, if there are any question relating to paragraph one, just answer it there and then,
Mm-hmm.
maybe. But then, like, overall questions like summarizing it, or like, which talks about the whole thing, those few questions you can answer after.
Later, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. What I suggest is like in 1 or 2 minutes, you can actually get the basic idea of the passage without bothering about the questions. So straight away, if you start answering questions, you might not get that chance to warm up with the passage, isn't it? So my suggestion to you would be to give like 1 or 2 minutes quick read. Don't try to understand everything, but then reading, like zipping through the passage would tell you about the context, the environment, the tone, whether it's talking about some book or it's talking about some shop or it's talking about some interaction between a boy and a girl. You know, these are some of the passages I can remember. There was one where this girl meets her grandfather for the first time, and the whole interaction is described in the narrative passage. So spending 1 or 2 minutes on analyzing the passage and being with the content makes a lot of sense when it comes to narrative. And what you said is right, that after that you can go for the easy questions first, right? So for that there is a strategy. Actually, what I'm saying, it's actually given in the form of a strategy. If you go to Khan Academy and study some strategies, they call this as SQ3R. Did we discuss about this? SQ3R, have we discussed? Do you remember? Does it ring a bell in your ears that, oh, this is something which I have heard?
Yes, sir.
SQ3R. Yeah. So it's S stands for survey, then go straight to the questions, then read, recite, and review. So these are the steps which can be used for actually any passage. So I can call this strategy as the mother of all, right? Because this can be applied to any type of passage. Whether it is a science passage or a narrative passage or a social science or a history passage, this is one strategy which you can apply to all. Does that make sense, Navya? SQ3R,
Yeah.
what is it? Survey. So in survey stage, what do you do?
Like just skim through the thing.
Just skip through the passage to get the basic idea. Then go to the questions. So you are straight away going to the questions. You're not answering them, but you're analyzing the questions. So what do you do when you go to the questions, Anya? After doing the survey, if you go to the questions, what would you do there?
Just
So actually you can answer a few easy questions directly just after the survey, because survey is enough to answer
Yeah.
those word-based questions and a few lines. Like, what is the use of second paragraph? Let's say there is a question which says, what is the purpose of the first paragraph? Well, in this case, in any case, you have to read the first paragraph carefully, right? So why not answer the question also? So that's why going to the questions means analyzing the nature of the question and actually shooting a few of them, doing a few of them right away, just after the survey. Does that make sense? Will it save your time? Ujjwal, do you think it will save time?
Yes, sir.
So just after survey, you will do some questions. Then you will read the passage actually. So survey is not reading, right? Why are you reading the passage now? After doing some easy questions, why am I asking you to read the passage?
So that you can do the other questions.
Exactly, because some other questions are now forcing you to read the passage. So everything is need driven now. Your approach is very, very need driven. For some questions, survey was enough, right? Like say you are a patient, you are a doctor, right? So some patients will come with common cold. If a patient comes with common cold, would you ask him to go to do some tests and diagnosis before you suggest a medicine for a common cold patient? Navya, what will you do if you are a doctor? Navya, good morning.
Yes, sir.
You want me to repeat the question?
Yes.
Okay, no problem. So if the patient is just suffering from some common cold, would you ask him to go for some kind of test, or you will straight away tell him the medicine ke beta ye le, tera sar dard aur जुकाम इससे ठीक हो जाएगा, ऐश कर.
No, so if there's like common cold, then I'll just give it because
Exactly, that's what you do when you suffer for common cold, right? You don't go for any analysis or even to a doctor, right? Similarly, there would be some questions which would not need any analysis, right? You can straight away answer them after survey. Anya, do you agree?
yes, sir.
Yeah, see, there are three of you, so I'll be coming back to you guys again and again to ask questions. So you better be attentive, okay? So for answering a few questions, you don't need any knowledge, and actually, you know what? You can actually save a lot of time, and you can get that initial kick that, oh, I've got some 2-3 questions already answered. Yeah. So that's survey, then questions, then read the passage, and then recite the passage. Now, what do you mean by reciting the passage? Ujjwal, can you tell, or Navya, like, what do you mean by recite? Why do you recite a passage? What is the advantage of reciting after reading? And what exactly does it mean? So recite means to paraphrase, to tell the whole paragraph in your own words. So before you go to the questions, you recite it and you tell what do you gather from the passage. What is the advantage of reciting?
So that you can remember the basic.
So that you can remember, and sometimes reciting also helps you to understand it better, isn't it? When you put something in your own words, you are able to relate it better, right? So after reciting, then you can review the questions and do the difficult ones later. Okay. So remember this: survey, questions, read, recite, and review. Right.
And sir, how much time like should all of this take for any passage?
Yeah, so let's divide our time also. Survey should not take more than 1 to 2 minutes. So if you ask me, survey would be like 2 minutes max. Then easy questions would be like maybe another. So you will get like 3 to 4 easy questions. So for each question, I would give like 1.5 minutes. So 4 into 1.5 would be like 6 minutes, right? Right? And nahin, 6 minutes to nahi chalega. So for 4 questions, 4 minutes. So 6 minutes gone. And then you have got 6 to 7 minutes for difficult questions. So I'll say difficult questions, 7 minutes. So like this, in 13 minutes, you can finish the whole thing, right? But this is very crude. I mean, it's just coming out of my mind. It's not something, but then, yeah, this makes a lot of sense to me when I see it now. 7 minutes for rest of the questions, 4 minutes for easy ones and to read the passage. And like this, in 13 minutes, you end up finishing the whole passage. So one passage should be given 13 minutes. Yeah. The structure of SAT is going to change a little bit. So this time may change because now it's going to be shorter. So it will be easy for you. Okay. Okay. So know your skills, understand different types of passages. Based on the nature of the passage, you will mold your strategy. If it's a science passage, there is a fixed structure to the science passage. How is the science passage structured? You've done quite a lot of passages by now, right? So if I ask you, how is a science passage structured? Can you tell me? What are the different sections of a science passage? Here we go. I've already written it here. So I'm going to share this document with you. It will be of great help. You just read it and you will get a lot of ideas from it. So first paragraph talks about the study goal. In a science passage, they define the problem first. Anya, have you seen this? Can you give me some examples?
Yes.
If from your memory, if you have done some science passage, how do they define their goal? Do you remember, Navya, Ujjwal, anything, anyone who can tell me how they define the goal? Something that you remember from all the practice that you have done till now. Which science passages have you done?
So that was one about octopi and how they use their uh arms
And was it,
navigation.
yeah, for navigation. It also talked about whether these octopus, you have their eyes or not, are they able to see or not? So the purpose of the study was to understand whether octopus have only tactile kind of sensation and no visual sensation. Uh, That was the goal of the study, right? And they eventually found that no, they have some kind of visual sensation as well. They make use of their eyes. So although they are not very sharp, but then they are able to see. Do you remember that? Or was it some other passage? I'm not sure.
Yes, sir.
I remember, give me some science passages. I want to, like, I remember one where there was a study about birds. How did they acquire the ability to fly? Some people say that it was tree down, others say that there is ground up. So the purpose of the whole study was to find out how birds acquired the ability to fly. Was it that whether they used to climb the trees and that gave them some kind of stimulus to develop wings, or some say that they used to go up the tree somehow and used to jump from there and that gave them ability to fly. So that is one study. I also remember studying a passage where they talked about fragrance of flowers. Do you remember why flowers have limited fragrance? Do you remember any of these passages? Why flowers have limited fragrance? No? Anya, you remember?
So,
Yes or no?
no.
No. Okay. So, these are some of the topics. There's another passage I was doing 2-3 days back, which was talking about the mutability and the plasticity of brain. And the study concluded that brain is a plastic organ. It actually can produce, you can produce new neurons throughout your life. Up until now, the assumption was that brain cannot produce new neurons. It can connect new connections. Yeah. It's actually very interesting. How do you remember anything, Ujjwal? What is the meaning of remembering something? Like what happens inside your brain when you remember something? Do you know that?
Neural connections are made.
Exactly. So neural connections are made, and as soon as the stimulus is there, that particular connection gets activated. It's like a circuit. So as soon as you look at your father, you recognize, oh, this guy is my father. And you say, hey, Pops, how are you? Because that neural connection is so strong that you don't even recognize that there is a neural connection. Otherwise, every individual is an individual, right? Why there is a guy who is called as Pop, another person called as Mom, then there are brothers and sisters, and then there are signs plus, minus, all this, isn't it? She's a teacher, he's my father, she's my mother, and all that. So these neural connections actually make you remember stuff and make you relate to something. Okay. So the study was that up until now, people used to think only these neural connections keep on developing throughout the age. No new neurons can be created in the brain. But this study showed that new neurons can also be generated inside the body. Interesting, isn't it? Navya, is it interesting or boring?
Somewhat interesting.
And you know what? I want you to fake it to a certain extent. I know science is not very, very juicy for some people, but then for the purpose of SAT, if you see your tell yourself, oh, very interesting, somehow you will find it really very interesting. Just think about it. Yeah. So yeah, those would be the science passages. Now, but the essence is that a science passage would always have this structure. They'll start with a problem. After that, there will be an experiment. After experiment, there will be results. After results, there will be actions and suggestions. So if you know that it starts with a problem, ends with a suggestion, you can know, okay, fine, if I'm reading the last paragraph, what will I get? In the last paragraph, what will you get?
Suggestions.
Exactly. So will it make your life a little easier with science passages? Who said? Navya said she doesn't like science at all. Navya, will this help if you have a skeleton with you of all the science passages?
Yeah, so
Yeah, so you can always go with this. You'll find that a science passage will always have this kind of structure, right? Social science passages, what do you see there? This is what you see there. Current affairs, current events, like for example, internet. Impact of internet on memory. Do you remember doing this passage? I don't know. But yes, I can give you some examples. Impact of internet on memory. So what do you think, guys? Is internet good for memory or bad for memory? The advent of internet has invalidated remembering a lot of stuff, right? Do you try to remember a lot of stuff these days? Hello, good morning.
No, sir, because we can always refer to the internet.
So
we
internet is
don't
bad
really
for
rely on
memory.
our memory.
Internet is bad for memory. So, after some days, we will have some less ability to remember stuff because of internet. Do you agree? Memory will be of no use after some time. So the newborn babies would have no reference for any memory because internet is there. Do you think so? Like after 5 generations, 500 years from now? Oh, okay. I'm asking you to speculate. You can be wrong, but give me an answer. There's nothing like right or wrong. We are speculating. Do you think that people will lose the ability to memorize stuff because of internet? Ujjwal, what do you say?
So I don't think it'll be to that
Yeah. So
extent.
this passage said this, that it's not that your memory will become totally redundant, but you would now have to remember different set of things, right? Instead of remembering the facts and figures, you will be required to remember the location of that fact and figure. In where do you find it in Yahoo or Google, and how do you write it to get it? At least that much you have to remember, right? You cannot forget everything. So that's what is going to be in the science passages. Online sales. How many of you have bought something from Amazon? Has anyone, have all of you bought something from Amazon? Of course, yes, right? Do you read comments about the product before you buy it?
Yeah, sometimes.
Do you think that those comments can be doctored?
Yeah, easily. That's why it's like always preferable to read a couple of comments and not just rely on
Exactly.
one
So
or
there is
two.
one passage which I recently read in SAT, which was talking about doctoring all those comments and what is the impact of a positive comment and a negative comment and how people decide about different objects. There was another passage related to news analysis. Do you guys all believe in news? Whatever is said in the TV or whatever is written in newspapers, do you believe it?
If it's from a credible
If it's
source
what?
like the Times of India or the New York, if it's from a credible source like the Times of India or the New York Times, then
Okay.
yes.
What if Hindustan Times is sold to Congress and Times of India is affiliated to BJP and you know this for a fact?
So I think values is correct, but most of the time it's very biased and often like inflated.
Yeah, and
So
same is the case with TV news also, right?
yeah,
Like you can see that they have a very clear flavor and very clear inclination towards one political party at the expense of other. So if you go back 20 years back and if you ask people, they had blind faith in all these news sources. दूरदर्शन पे कुछ दिखाया है तो वो सही ही होगा. But now people have become very skeptical, right? So that is one of the topics that you get here. And this is what is social science passages. You can get a topic about receiving and receiving and giving gifts. Do you remember this passage? Receiving and giving gifts. Did you read this? Was it a part of our study? You can say yes or you can say no. No, I don't remember. Or you can say yes, I remember. Don't force your memory. पढ़ा था क्या? Do you remember studying this passage? Anya, Ujjwal, do you remember studying this passage? No.
No, sir.
Okay, so this passage, so I'm giving you just some examples so that you can relate with these passages. Okay, science passage would have something related to science. Okay, these social science passages would be something from the social life, like how we think while giving the gifts and how we think while receiving the gifts. Okay. Now, having this kind of background in your mind, okay, fine, this seems to be a social science passage. And if you classify it, it will be a great help to you to score high. Because if you can classify it, you can know its tone, you can also predict a lot of information presented there. You can relate to it in an easy way. Do you think so?
Sir, I just wanted to inform you that Navya has joined with me um, because of network problems. So she's
Okay.
left.
Okay. So Navya is there with you.
Yes,
So
sir.
we have narrative, social science, then science passages, and the last category is that of history passages. You have done a lot of history passages also. Do you remember a few of them? What do you see in a history passage?
One was about colonialism,
Hmm.
and it was from two perspectives, like
Hmm.
the country that was going to be colonized and the other country, which was the
Yes, yes,
American or
yes.
European country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Then you know what? You will find that these themes get repeated, right? So the passages may be different, but the themes would be the same. Colonization, liberty, should we follow the constitution or not? So one guy would come and say that, you know what, constitution is something which is very sacred, you should follow it in word and spirit. The other guy would say, well, there are some rules which do not make sense to me, then why should I follow them? I would rather break them. The other guy would say that no, if you break them, then mob law is not a substitute for a bad law. A bad law is at least a law. You cannot substitute it by mob law. And then these two guys would be fighting. So as you rightly said, on the same topic, usually there are two guys having contrasting opinions. That's what happened in a history passage. And the topics could be related to equality between men and women, the role of women, should they be um, so this is usually from 17th, 18th century, 19th century, those kind of topics. So relating with them, so you'll find something where they say, okay, women are not allowed to work outside. Should they be allowed to work, or should they have this, why should I say allowed to work? I mean, should women work outside their homes? Does that make sense to you, Anya and Ujjwal? In today's world, if somebody says, should women be allowed to work or not, seems too alien, right? Really, you would think like this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So relating with these history passages requires a little effort because it talks about an entirely different era, which is different from yours. So you might not be able to directly relate to it. So fine. What is one thing that we have studied in last half an hour or so?
The different types of passages and
Exactly.
how we have to apply different strategies to deal with them.
Exactly. And that it makes a lot of sense to classify the passages, because once you know the category of it, you would be able to anticipate the content, isn't it? And it will be that much easier to answer questions. It takes a lot of time to understand a passage if you don't even know its category. But if you know that, okay, it belongs to this category, it becomes very easy to understand and answer questions. Does that make sense? So the first important skill to get good marks in SAT reading is to categorize the passage. See, you don't know which passage you will get. Do you know that? You know which passage, which exact passage are you going to get? Do you know that before the exam?
No, sir.
But you would definitely know that the first passage would be a narrative passage. Always, always, always. Second passage is a social science passage. Always. Third passage is science. Fourth is history. Now, this third and fourth sometimes they interchange. And last one is again science. So there are two science passages, the last one and either second, third, or fourth. And then, the first is always narrative. Rest of them, sometimes they change the sequence. This is a very, very important information for you, isn't it? So if you know something about the test, you can make a strategy around it. That, okay, fine. If this is narrative, then it's going to be some personal story. If it is science, they'll talk about some experiment, results, actions. If it is history, then you know the topics. If it is social science, you know the topics. Can you imagine? Is your imagination working now, Anya, Ujjwal?
Yes,
Are you
sir.
are you guys talking to yourself or you are listening to me?
So we're listening to you.
I'm sorry?
So we're listening to you.
Okay. So will this make easy if you are able to classify the passages?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is one thing that you will always do. You will classify the passage, understand different types of questions. This is again one important skill. Word based, line based, paragraph based, passage based. I think the definition themselves, these terms themselves are quite clear, right? You know the difference between a word based, line based, paragraph based, passage based questions. Do you?
Yes.
And for all these different types of questions, you can have different strategies. So what would be your strategy for a word based or a line based question?
Just read the sentence.
Yeah,
And
So
manage
it
by hearing.
managed by hearing. Don't have to read the whole passage to answer them. These are easy ones. And let's say if you have like 6 questions left and you have got 2 minutes, hypothetical situation. You are in the SAT test, 6 questions left, 2 minutes. Now you can't even read the passage. What will you do? Quickly select the word-based and line-based questions, do them. So out of 6, if there are 3 word-based, line-based, 50% of questions would be done in like 1 or 2 minutes. It won't take long and you don't have to understand the passage for them, right? That's why this is so very important. You can see it's like a cricket match going on, right? Sometimes you have to change your strategy based on the situation of the match, right? Let's say, God forbid, you take a lot of time in first 2 passages and the last 2 passages you don't have enough time for them. What will you do now? Suppose first 2 or 3 passages took a lot of time. By their nature, they were complicated and you lost track of time and somehow you have got very less time now.
Complete the short like word and line based question.
Exactly. And don't leave any question because there are no negative markings there. You don't lose marks for wrong questions. So you can use this as a strategy, right? Now, there's one more way of classifying the questions, understanding the questions based on the skill tested. See, all these questions are aimed at testing one or the other skill that you possess, right? Hello.
Yes, sir.
So what are the different skills tested through reading? You can see it here.
Analytical.
Understanding the scope of the passage. Yeah, analytical skills, of course. But there are some questions which are just aimed at understanding the scope of the passage. Scope means, is it something related to science or history or, just the a different, a clear understanding of the scope itself will give you a lot of ideas about the answer. Like, oh, this particular passage talks about constitution a lot of times. I don't think it will talk about human behavior because constitution is the main theme. Then probably constitution is the scope, not human behavior, not human history, although they are related, right? So that's scope. Scope means in which broad group can you classify the passage. Don't you sometimes say out of scope or within scope? Have you used these terms? Oh, this is out of scope.
Yeah.
In your economics or English or whatever, this particular topic seems to be out of scope. I don't think it's going to be there in the exam. So out of scope means somehow related to the topic, but still out of scope, outside the boundary, right? So some questions are scope based. Tone based questions, whether the writer is supporting some idea or opposing some idea. So understanding the tone itself will help you answer the question, right? Organization-based questions. What do you mean by organization-based questions? What is the meaning of, what is the use of the third paragraph in this whole passage? So in order to answer organization questions, what is required? How will you answer organization questions? Ujjwal and Ananya. Anya and who else is there? Ujjwal, Anya and?
By understanding the individual passages and the order in which they're arranged.
Yeah, by understanding individual paragraphs. And like if it is third paragraph, then what is the use of first and fourth? By that you can understand the third paragraph. What is the purpose it's serving? It might be giving an extra example. It might be having a U-turn or contradicting something. It might be introducing a new idea. So based on that, it might be telling about the setup of the experiment. So organization questions. And last is purpose questions. What is the purpose of using this term? What is the purpose of writing the whole passage? Is he trying to convince us about something? So those are purpose questions. So this is, again, you can keep in your mind. What is the nature of the question? Is it a scope, tone, organization, or purpose question? Right? So knowing the nature of the passage, knowing the nature of the questions, and again, classifying the question based on the skill tested. And then we have discussed about the define your strategy. This is one strategy that we use. Survey questions, read, recite, and review. Some people read the passage first, some people read the questions first. My suggestion to you is to quickly read the passage, get the basic idea, then go to the questions. Don't go straight to the questions. Then there are some strategies for speed reading. I think we have covered this in our earlier classes also, but this is something which is important. How do you speed up? How can you acquire speed? So we discussed about combing, first para, last para, first line, last line, all these strategies. What is combing? Do you remember what is combing? Anand sir is here. So your maths class will start in a while. What is combing, by the way? Ujjwal, Anya, do you remember what is combing?
So can you explain it again?
So combing is focusing on one paragraph at a time and answering questions related to that paragraph first, not reading the whole passage. जैसे होता है ना military वाले लोग combing करते हैं आतंकवादियों का. So if there are some terrorists at one place, they will do heavy bombarding at that particular point. So you focus only on one paragraph, answer questions based on that. That's combing, right? Instead of reading the whole passage, one paragraph at a time, you go on just one paragraph at a time, right? So that helps you to speed up because you don't have to remember a lot of stuff. Another strategy for speed is first para and last para and first line and last line. Have you used this in any of your tests? Suppose you want to watch something quickly or read something quickly, you read the first paragraph and last paragraph of it. I'm reading a book these days. Actually, I've kind of, I'm trying to read 100 pages every day. And you know what? First 2-3 days, it was very difficult. Third day, I came up with this technique. I was teaching this all this while, but I didn't use it. Now, I read the first line and the last line first. And it helps me to understand very, very quickly. I don't have to read the whole paragraph, right? So this you can apply in your passages as well. Instead of reading the whole passage, read the first and the last line. In case the passage requires you to read it, you read it. Otherwise, you can go on, right? What is this PEE? You can read it here. PE doesn't mean PE, which you generally use for. PE stands for point, example, and explanation. So every time you read a passage, you'll find that it has a point at the beginning, then there is an example, then there is an explanation. And do you think, on which particular part do you think most of the questions would be? Any guesses? Will they be on point or example or explanation?
The point.
The point, yes. So
The
if you
explanation.
not much on explanation and examples, most of the questions are about the point. Okay, Fine, we'll study about these in the next class. I'm going to share this document with you, so you would have it there with you. And I'll also share it with Anand sir. So Anand sir will send an email to you. So copy
Please
link.
make me the host. Excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir.
Please
Yes, sir.
make me the host before you leave.
Okay, sir.
Anya has left.
Make host. I made you the host, sir.
Thanks, sir.